no one is above the law. The people have had enough. We will root out the criminals and expose them all. We're fighting to expose the criminal element in Texas. Our investigation in the Brazoria County's justice system has just begun.
And now your host, Kevin Henry.
Welcome back to the Kevin Henry Podcast, the show where we pull back the curtain on corruption, hold the powerful accountable, and give a voice to the people they'd rather silence. And before we dive in, do us a quick favor. If you care about the truth getting out there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode with someone you know who needs to wake up. And don't forget to visit us at kevinhenrypodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter. We've got exclusive updates, behind-the-scenes info, and action alerts you won't find anywhere else. All right, let's get into it. Tonight's guest needs very little introduction for anyone who's been paying attention to the battle for election integrity. In 2022, he ran for Secretary of State in Arizona, one of the most contested battlegrounds in the nation. And let's just say things did not quite pass the smell test. He's been sued, smeared, censored, and he's still standing, still fighting, still warning the country about what's coming next in 2026. Please welcome to the show, Arizona State Senator Mark Finchem. Welcome to the show, Mark. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. The last time I saw you, we were in Nevada.
Yeah, and you were running for sheriff, and we were talking about election integrity.
Yeah.
Things don't change, right?
Yeah, some things never change, I guess. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into today and get your opinion on a few things. But real quick, can you tell us what you've been up to recently?
So besides being a state senator, I'm also the executive director for the Election Fairness Institute. We're a 501c3. We're a little bit different than most of the non-government 501c whatever's out there. We primarily engage in doing research on election process and the defects within those processes, and then we publish reports on that. Doesn't matter what political party you're in, because we're 501c3, we can't pick favorites. And right now, I don't have a favorite because both sides of the two major parties are really the problem. But we've been engaged in a couple of major research projects that have been turned over to the Department of Justice. One of those is just a massive money laundering scam that has been benefiting political offices from town council all the way up to president. Now, fortunately, not this president. In fact, if anything, it's been a drag in his attempt to try and right the ship of state, if you will. But it pencils out right now with what we know, and this is all public record stuff. So we're not using any resources that the federal law enforcement officials have. We're just using public records. Pencils out to be about $1.6 trillion in money that's been laundered into the American election system. Every state, every party, every office. Now that means the legislative branch, the executive branch, and yes, I know it's hard to believe, the judicial branch. So there's a lot of cash that's in the system that's trying to buy influence, that's trying to buy power. I'm very pleased that we were able to turn over a pretty comprehensive report on what we found so far to Attorney General Bondi and to Director Patel at the FBI. That's one project we're working on. Then we're also engaged in a voter roll analysis project. We partnered up with or sponsored some of the work that Dr. Andrew Paquette and Dr. Jerome Corsi were doing under the God's Five Stones website. You can go there and find reports on a number of different states where the voter rolls appear to have been compromised by what's called the cryptologic algorithm. In other words, this is statecraft, by the way. This is not something that parties do. This is something that is done by a much higher, much better financed organization. I'm not going to use any three-letter agencies in the U.S., but there are organizations all over the world that want to disrupt elections in America. So if people want to know more about what we do, they can go to the website. The tiny URL is goefi.org. That's goefi.org for Election Fairness Institute. We're 100% private funded. We don't take government contracts. So when we have donors that give $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, that's our base donor. Those are the people that really want to have fair elections. And, it's interesting, Kevin, we've got people from every political stripe that are making contributions to our work. I think that the overriding signal there is Americans just want to have fair elections, and that's what we're focused on.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm an independent. I'm a conservative independent, but I'm an independent, and I really got turned off from the Republican Party when I started basically watching the stuff happen to you. So I really wasn't awake until 2020, 21 to what actually goes on, and watching some of the shenanigans just lay out right in front of you on national TV. Yeah. It makes you scratch your head and wonder, how can they get away with this? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that this isn't right.
Well, and I first arrived on the scene with this whole topic. I was first elected to the House of Representatives in 2014, began serving in 2015, was termed out. I was there for 8 years and I was pretty conservative when I got there. And many people thought that I was the most conservative member of the House when I left. Ran for Secretary of State in 2022 for the 2022 election. And we alleged through an ad hoc committee hearing in 2020, November 30th, you may recall, we had 10 and a half hours of testimony. And it's sad, but quite frankly, I'm elated to see that everything that the media told us we didn't know, everything that we found in the committee hearing, all the evidence, all the testimony that was given, that the media tried to essentially say, oh, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist. Guess what? 100% of it has now been validated. So it's nice to be vindicated. We knew that something was wrong, but we really, my colleagues and I that were on this election ad hoc committee, we didn't really know to the extent to which our elections had been compromised. So it's very clear that the 2020 election in Arizona was tampered with. We also have whistleblowers now that are coming forward for the 2022 election, where Carrie Lake and I were running mates. Carrie ran for governor, I ran for Secretary of State, which at the time in Arizona law, the Secretary of State is the de facto lieutenant governor. Both of us saw an anomaly that the courts refused to do anything about. So, for example, in Carrie's case, and in mine, because we're in the same ballot, we have ballots that were counted that were never even signed. These are mail-in ballots, okay? Under Arizona law, those cannot be counted. Yet we've got a judge who said, oh, well, we're going to count them anyhow. No, that's a violation of my 14th Amendment right.
So you were on the ballot and Carrie was on the ballot. Judge was saying they're going to run these things through anyways. Who was standing up on your behalf and saying, no, we're not going to count these?
Well, we had We the People. There's a coalition in Arizona, We the People. And a guy by the name of Brian Blem was the attorney. My attorney, for Carrie, my attorney was Dan McCauley. And by the way, both of them were sanctioned by the bar because they dared to represent candidates, conservative candidates, in a legitimate election contest question. Now, what's absolutely disgusting to me now, because of another project I'm working on in the Senate, just how corrupt our judicial system has become. We have judges that don't give a whit about what the law says. They deviate from jurisprudence. They make things up out of thin air, and then they just expect that they're going to get a pass.
Who's pulling the judges' strings? There's got to be money somewhere behind that.
Oh, there's profit motive behind a lot of this stuff. But I think one of the problems that we've got is you get judges who are put into office and they're there forever, which I think is a fundamental flaw with the judicial system. They're also unaccountable. Now, you might hear this thing about a non-retention election. Wait a minute. In fact, I was in Boise, Idaho 2 days ago testifying in front of their Senate and House of Representatives. They have a family court orders problem going on there, just like we have in Arizona. And one of the one of the questions that was pitched to me was, well, how do we change this? Well, in Arizona, we can actually vote to recall a judge. It's a high bar. If they've been appointed, you got to have 10% of the polity that they represent. So that means 10% of the, for example, in Maricopa County, you'd have to have 10% of the voters in Maricopa County. And I believe they would have to divide that by 37, because I think there's 37 family court judges if you wanted to kick one out. And we're exploring what the mechanics of that look like. But there's this thing called a non-retention election. And periodically judges come up and their name is on the ballot, and it's to retain or not retain. Okay, that sounds like insulation from accountability to me. Try finding information about any of those judges and their rulings, their behavior in court. Some of the things, the shenanigans that go on in the courtroom are just absolutely disgusting.
Right.
So I asked the representative in Idaho, do you think that the legislature would be in a little bit of trouble if it had a non-retention election? What if the senator from Yavapai County, instead of having to compete in the marketplace of ideas and tell people what I've done during the period of time that I've been in office, maybe it's just, we'll just have an election. Do we retain him or not retain him? It seems kind of odd that you would have that for the legislature and not have the same thing for the judiciary. Now,
Right.
Of course, we also have the same architecture that the judiciary has for the executive branch. You don't have a non-retention election every 2 years. You just have term limits. Okay.
Right.
Well, hold on a second. The court doesn't have term limits, and they don't have true elections. So in other words, they're unaccountable.
Mm-hmm.
That is where you have the political nature of a judge enter into the courtroom. I mean, you look at all these federal judges that were appointed by Biden and Obama. They're doing everything they can to thwart President Trump's attempt to clean up the swamp. Well, that's because they are the swamp, and they
Right.
don't want to see their swamp brethren kicked out of office. Okay, I get it. But there's still this thing called the Constitution.
That's what everybody forgets about is the Constitution.
Yeah.
I guess they think it's an old document, almost 250 years old. Why do we still need it? Well, that's the reason why we're here. That's the reason. That's the founding documents, and there's a lot of people in the judicial system that would like to get rid of it. It seems like, and it's
it gets in the way.
It gets in the way of their plunder, right?
Quite frankly, I've had this discussion with some of my more liberal colleagues. All right, exactly which one of the Bill of Rights would you get rid of? Are you okay with me telling you to shut up and sit down?
And what do they
And
say?
it's crickets, because they want to get rid of the Second Amendment. Oh, all right. So it's okay for me to tell you to sit down and shut up, and now you got no way to enforce your right to stand up and say something. How does that work?
Right.
The judiciary right now, I'm on a rant with the judges, just because we've lifted the hood on the family court orders process in Arizona, and we've got judges who are bankrupting families, and it's a profit motive, man. You got attorneys who are making bank on billable hours that run anywhere from $250 to $600 an hour, and you've got psychiatrists who are charging anywhere from $250 to $600 an hour. And then you've got judges who are doing what's called court-ordered behavioral intervention. Let me take a minute and explain what that is. And I know you'll get it because you're a horseman. You can take a horse to water. Good luck trying to make him drink. If he ain't thirsty, he's not going to take a sip of that. So, in other words, we've got parents who, and by the way, this is a very small percentage of cases, 1 to 2% of divorce cases where there's a child custody battle. But it always seems to be that there's one narcissistic patient. I'm going to call them patient because I think they're nuts. But you got one narcissistic parent, and you've got one who is probably more diminutive. You've got one that knows how to control people, and you've got one that's used to being controlled. And it seems as though the court always sides with the person who doesn't have money so that the billable hours scheme can go after the people who do. And we're talking about the irreparable harm that's being done to children I mean, justice denied for a child, if it's delayed, it's denied
Right.
because they're not children forever. So that's one of the things that I'm working on as a senator. And what's very interesting, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to close the loop on this. That's all relative to the people who are elected. And if the people who are elected, if money laundering and foreign cash is interfering with that, it's not a true representation of the American people. It's not a true representation of the people of Arizona, of Texas, wherever state you live in, whatever county you live in. It's skewed in the direction of money.
Right.
And that ain't right. So that's the battle that we're fighting.
Yeah, that's admirable too. We have a huge family court problem here in Texas, and we've had some cases, people reaching out to us about certain things and their grievances with the court system. And it's truly sad because the person that's hurt the most is the child.
Yeah.
The child's the one that's hurt the most. And it's the attorneys, the judges, everybody that's making money and profiting off of this, they don't give a damn. They don't. They don't care at all. All they care about is the revenue.
The judicial industrial complex.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing it on a grand scale, national level stuff, but you really feel it at home whenever the kids are affected. And that affects the kids for a lot of times, most of their lives, depending on how what the judicial process was and how the judge sided.
What's remarkable to me is this has been going on for well over a decade, probably more than 2 or 3. The family court system at its base was supposed to represent the best interests of the child. Well, in the there's a court case that was just ruled on by the Supreme Court called U.S. v. Skermetti. That's Mr. Skermetti. I think it's Anthony Skermetti is the Attorney General for the state of Tennessee. Tennessee legislature passed a bill. It was signed into law that a child may not unilaterally sign up for sex change surgery. That you have to have parental consent. Well, of course, the satanic left lost their minds over that because they want to mutilate as many little kids as they possibly can before the end comes. Well, thank heavens, Mr. Skermetti decided he wanted to take that to Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled, in fact, Justice Thomas in some of his dicta is just very eloquent about it. The court is not the super legislature, not superior to the legislature. It's also not the super parent. The court's job is to ensure the best interest of the child, the minor. And we have the same situation because mutilating a child's genitals is permanent. You don't go back.
Right.
So when you have a child who is wrapped up in a squabble between parents, and you've got judges who are feeding this complex of lawyers and psychologists and bankrupting the family in doing so, you're doing irreparable harm to the child's mind. In many cases that we found, in fact, this was the case up in Idaho, it's been the case in Arizona, and we've gotten calls from Texas, California, Utah, Colorado, Georgia, New Jersey, there's probably more, who have taken great interest in what we're doing in Arizona. And basically, we've had 3 hearings. If people want to watch the hearing, by the way, if they want to subscribe to my Substack article, it's markfinchem.substack.com. You can take a look at previous postings. The last 2 postings have the complete video from 3 different hearings. The first one, I think, was about 3 hours. The second 2 are 7 to 8 hours long, and they're painful. You hear the stories, and they will make you weep that the court has done this to families, to children, and it's out of control. So one of the things that we decided to do with this particular setting was see to it that parents, minor children, and even children who have been, I shouldn't call them children, even adults who have aged out of the system. In other words, they've gone to age 18 and told the court to bugger off. They no longer have jurisdiction. Giving them the opportunity to have the microphone and tell their story has been pretty damn powerful, my friend. When you hear the story coming from the people who have been injured by judges who are out of control, and I'm going to call them rogue judges because they're doing things that are way outside of human reason, let alone the law.
Right.
So
would you say these judges that are involved in this type of scheme, they're not Christians by any stretch of the imagination, right? I mean, these people, they can't be Christians to do this to children and to allow this.
I don't know. But I believe, as Voltaire said, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
And when you've got a judge sitting on a dais that is basically unaccountable because you can't remove them except by impeachment, you got to take that into account.
Got you. Well, Mark, we need to get a word from our sponsors. I want to get back and I want to touch back again on the election integrity issues. Sit tight. We'll be right back.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Need a barn built to last? At Stuckey Barns in Brazoria County, Texas, we blend quality craftsmanship with rugged durability and Texas pride to make your dream barn real. From custom barns to metal buildings, we build strong, local, and backed by a hometown service. Need bold, high-quality ink? Seven Souls Tattoo Studio has you covered. We're obsessively clean and professional, guiding you from idea to unforgettable art. Got old ink? We'll transform it into stunning new work with precision and creativity. Drop by Seven Souls at 20 Circle Way in Lake Jackson, Texas. Boat season's here. Is your ride ready? At Liquid Rides in Brazoria, we handle certified marine repairs and full engine builds. We're your Mercury Marine and PCM dealer, keeping you smooth all year. Plus, custom stereo installs for boats, vehicles, side-by-sides, and Jeeps. Liquid Rides, custom audio, certified performance, built in Texas. Looking for real coverage from real people? Whether it's your home, car, or business, go see Landra Olson's team at Farmers Insurance in West Columbia, Texas, where hometown service meets top-rated protection. Spring's here, and it's time to get those flower beds and gardens in shape. Rifles Feed and Supply in Brazoria has soil, mulch, and everything you need to make your yard pop, plus the best feed and supplies for your animals. Fentanyl is taking our loved ones' lives every day, but knowledge can save them. Travis's Voice is dedicated to raising awareness, educating communities, and preventing future tragedies. To learn more, go to travis'svoice.org.
And now, back to the Kevin Henry Podcast.
And we're back with Arizona State Senator Mark Finchem. Instead of going into the doom and gloom stuff of all the election integrity issues, Senator Finchum, I'd like to try to give some people hope. I watched you go through it in 22, and I watched that sham of election over there in Arizona. I think many of us did. We watched the whole process unfold on national TV over there because that's pretty much all we saw. I signed myself up for it and went through it. And as you know, I ran for sheriff. They kicked my poll watchers out. They turned the cameras off at the tabulation center. And there was people coming out of certain locations saying my name wasn't even on their ballot.
Which are all violations of law, by the way. But hey, it's just.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, whenever you have district attorneys and, people that just, you can go scream at them till you're blue in the face and nothing's ever done about it. Everybody tells you to follow with the elections office in Austin. But can you give us some hope? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel for people that want to run and that are genuine, good-hearted candidates that would do good for people like our communities, our constituents? Can you give us some hope?
I think so. I mean, that's the whole point of the Election Fairness Institute. I mean, we're a 501c3, so if people want to make a contribution, check with your tax guy. But as far as I know, 501c3 means it's tax deductible. The things that we do, we're trying to get to the bottom of, and I think we're making some pretty decent progress, get to the bottom of how do we get rid of the 20 to 30% of people who are in office that didn't actually win an election. They participated in a manipulated selection, not an election. It was a simulation where the people went and voted. It's kind of like your election for sheriff. People went to vote. How am I going to vote for a guy that's not on the ballot? Well, how are the poll watchers going to know that you're not on the ballot if they get kicked out of the building? And then, of course, go to the elections office. It becomes a circular argument that, frankly, is nothing more than bull, okay?
Yeah. Real quick, stop you just for a second. They told me that there was no penalty for the crime. They said, yes, it is a crime that they have to leave the cameras on at the tabulation center, but the investigator called me back and said, there's no penalty for the crime, i.e. I can't do anything about it.
Well, that may be true. Now, I've been told that the Texas legislature is a crap show.
You're right. You're pretty right about that.
I'm afraid that there's probably kids on here, and I don't want you to get in trouble. In talking about how do we give people hope, all right? So here's an example. Dr. Paquette, in the work that he did, identified a cryptologic algorithm at work in the Arizona voter rolls. In those voter rolls, he found roughly 250,000 clone voter identities based upon a legitimate voter. Now, we turned that information over to anybody that would listen, to the AG, to the political parties, to the recorders, everybody. Because we're 501c3, we cannot promote a candidate, a party, or a platform, except the platform of equality and I'm not talking DEI here. I'm talking about a 14th Amendment right to equal protection under the law. Okay? So where we're at now, Recorder Justin Heap, previously in the House of Representatives, ran and won the Maricopa County recorder position. Within a few weeks, he went through the voter rolls and eliminated 250,000 people that shouldn't be on the voter rolls.
250,000 people.
Whether they were deceased, had moved to another state, whatever the reason might be. Maybe they were a clone voter, didn't exist in the first place, okay? So it's going to take courage, like Justin's courage, to do things like that. Now, I live in Yavapai County, which is just north of Maricopa County, up in Prescott, Arizona. We've got one of the best recorders in the country, Michelle Burchell. She's been all over this since she was first in office, 5-6 years ago. So she has been continuously cleaning the voter rolls and making sure that they just follow the law. That's all anybody's asking for, just follow the law. Now, I know that this is Arizona, but we're doing the same work in Tennessee, in Texas, in Idaho, California. In fact, my good friend, a Democrat, by the way, Clint Curtis. Clint is the guy who was hired by a Republican in Florida a couple decades ago to write software that would do what? Flip votes in an electronic voting machine.
Oh, wow.
So now Clint has just been appointed the Shasta County recorder, and he intends to make sure that they have paper ballots that are counted by hand at the precinct level on election day. So we have pockets of people that are doing the right thing, and I think that that's giving more and more individuals courage. The other thing that I think we're going to see, I believe Tina Peters, who has really taken one for the people, Tina's in prison right now because she protected the federal voting records. Wait, what?
In Colorado, right?
In Colorado.
Yes.
So you've got a corrupt Secretary of State, a corrupt governor, a corrupt AG in Colorado, saw to it that this woman was persecuted. A Gold Star mom, by the way, a Navy SEAL son, died while in service to his country. She has a serious commitment to making sure that election law is followed. Well, she's sitting in prison for it, but I think that the U.S. government is probably going to have its hand in getting her out. But you've got courageous people all over the country who are now stepping forward, who are calling elected officials out. And I think the people are beginning to understand that they really do have power in their voice. And when you show up at a county supervisor's meeting, when you show up at something like that, it's going to make a difference. Now, some of the projects that we're engaged in, Captain Seth Keschel is on our board. Seth is in charge of the precinct mapping project that we had in 2024. Well, we've rolled out a new version of that. It's the precinct comparison project. It's doing basically the same thing that we did in 2024, and that is calling out precincts within counties that have suspicious activity, meaning all of a sudden they have this really high voter registration increase. And it's not necessarily tied to one party or another. It's just a high increase, okay? Mm-hmm. But it seems to be in certain precincts. And we were able in 2024 to map over 900, I think, counties. So that's roughly a third of the United States. We mapped every county and every precinct within that county of the 900 population. We're confident that because we took action mapping and gave that information to local canvassers, that they were able to knock on doors and validate whether somebody really was there, if there was really a domicile there. Was it a parking lot, a parking structure, a hardware store, or was it really somebody's home? So we got the precinct comparison project that's going on right now. That is sponsored by usually somebody who lives in the county, and it runs anywhere from $200 to $600 depending upon the size of the county. So, for example, just about every county in the Houston area, that's going to be about $600 just because there's so many precincts and so many voters. But you get to some place like, I don't know, Lincoln, Nebraska, $200 maybe. But
if somebody wanted to get involved with that, let's say here where I'm at in Brazoria County, how would they get involved with that?
Well, they can go to the Election Fairness Institute webpage, which is goefi.org. Click on the donate button. And when we see a donation that's $200, for example, we'll contact that individual because they have the opportunity to select mapping project. And if the map is going to be more than the $200 they gave, we'll let them know. The other thing they can do is they can subscribe to my Substack and essentially post a question. It's markfinchem.substack.com. And we'll be putting up information out there as well on the progress for this project. So we're not done with the campaign finance fraud project. We continue to map where the money's coming from, who seems to be engaged in this kind of property fraud that is laundering cash through real estate transactions. Then we've also got a couple of other lesser projects, but our team in Texas is doing an election worker training project, which is free. But if people want to make a donation of $20, it walks through an EAC certified EAC compliant training program. It's not certified by the EAC. EAC is the Federal Election Assistance Commission.
Right.
EAC puts out rules and how you're supposed to conduct elections and all that. Well, we've written a training for poll workers, election observers, because there's a lot of counties don't have that training. They just say, okay, you're now a poll worker. All right, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, I think there's about a 30-minute online course or something like that, 20 minutes or something, I believe, if somebody wanted to be a poll watcher. Not a poll worker, but a poll watcher. So I don't know about the poll worker process.
We've got some expertise within that shop, that part of our company, that would be happy to do an online training. If you've got a group of people in, let's say, a county someplace in Texas that would like to have training in, hey, what are the things that we need to look for in the way of election tampering? There's a good one. Or what are the rules concerning the opening and the closing of polls, the handling of ballots? Those kinds of things are in that training. Now, like I say, it's free. And if folks want that, if we don't have it up on the website, they can contact me at mark@goefi.org, and we'll see to it that they get a copy of it.
Okay.
But even though it's free, it did cost us a significant amount of capital to put that together. So if people want to make a contribution of $20, that goes a long way to help and defray the cost of it.
Right.
Then we've got a couple of other projects that they're in various stages of planning and preparation. One of those has to do with the amount of information that is hidden by election folks. We're right now looking at how do we get through the public records request system when you've got recorders who refuse to provide information that they're supposed to under law.
Yeah, our district attorney's office pretty much either asks for clarification on certain words and prolongs it. They literally wait till the 9th or 10th day before they send a response. Yeah. And then they send a response and they ask for quote unquote clarification. So it resets their clock. And then whenever you do a clarification letter or response, then they submit it to the AG's office for opinion. So then basically
it's a bureaucratic game.
If you're lucky, you might get your information that you're looking for in 2 months, maybe. Yeah. And that's if you didn't forget about it in the process.
So we're working on that. We're also we've got a litigation that we're sponsoring here in Arizona that I think actually has implications for all over the country. Under Arizona law, a county board of supervisors may, emphasis may, choose to use electronic tabulation. It doesn't say shall, it says may. Well, the Mojave County Board of Supervisors said that they wanted to do paper ballots counted by hand at the precinct level on election day. The radical leftist AG that was swept into power along with the social worker Katie Hobbs, who calls herself a governor, and the Sinaloa cartel lawyer who calls himself a Secretary of State, all three of these jokers were swept in with an irredeemably compromised election. Well, the AG comes out and threatens the County Board of Supervisors with arrest if they dare vote on an ordinance that would permit paper ballots counted by hand at the precinct level on election day.
Even though it's totally legal.
Even though it says it may, okay? Yeah. So we are now in court with that. The first judge dismissed the case. We've now gone to the appellate court because it's the black letter of law. This is one that we're pretty confident that we're going to win because it is the black letter of law, number one. Number two, under 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983, when a public official makes a threat under color of authority that interferes with the civil rights of an individual, how about a supervisor who has not yet cast a vote, but is threatened with arrest if they do? That's a federal crime.
Right.
And is this the case that we want to make a state official the subject of that kind of case? And by the way, there is no protection offered by the state of Arizona for a wrongful act committed under color of authority.
Like qualified immunity type protection,
yeah.
You're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. You're qualified as long as you're acting within the law. When you've acted outside of the law, you're on your own. We are not going to pay for your dalliance.
Right. So for people like us that have been digging into this, do you see this heading in the proper direction? Where do you see the election integrity issues going because you said you're sitting at DOJ now with a case. Do you feel like we're going to get anywhere at the DOJ?
Yeah, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that's where I've got hope, all right? But people need to understand, just because President Trump is in office, that doesn't mean we won.
Right.
As the joke goes, and then the fight started. Mm-hmm. It was a fight to get him in office. Well, now it's a fight to make sure that anybody who interferes with the chief magistrate of the United States executing his duty to take great care to execute the laws of the land, those individuals need to be held accountable. So part of our problem at this stage of the game is the delay in having U.S. attorneys confirmed and placed in office so that they can do the work of the people. Well, who's obfuscating that? Democrats. It took them a long time to build a corrupt system, and they don't want somebody coming in there to blow up their corrupt system.
Right. At the local level, they have their buddies in business. They have their buddies at the bench. They have their buddies that are attorneys. They have their buddies that's a district attorney, that's a sheriff, et cetera, et cetera. And you can't go in and upset that apple cart because then the whole system gets ruined if you let one good person get into one of these, offices.
They hate Boy Scouts, man.
Yeah, and we talked about this last time in Vegas, but the whole idea of putting one good sheriff in office across the country, that'll clean up a lot of this mess.
Oh, yeah. You take
Somebody
a look
that actually believes in the Constitution.
Sure. Take a look at Dar Leaf out of Berry County, Michigan. Dar that guy's a wrecking ball. Mm-hmm. And he's calling out tampered elections all over Michigan, in fact, all over the country, because they have an impact. Tampered elections in Arizona have an impact on Berry County in Michigan. Right. Mm-hmm. It has everything to do with apportionment, with the way that the people perceive their government. So there is a nexus there. Now, the courts don't want to look at that, but when the courts are unaccountable, why would they?
Right.
So, but I think that we are seeing a new day. No administration is perfect, and I'm not making excuses. I want to see the Epstein files as bad as anybody else, and I want to know who's on that list because they don't belong in office. But I think that President Trump is doing a pretty darn good job managing the finances of the country. Now, he's caught a lot of flack about the big bill, but That man plays chess on a very different level than most of these clowns that are in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Most of them couldn't find their butt with both hands. And that guy is up at 4 o'clock in the morning on the phone, averting a war here, there, and the other place, along with holding people accountable to work for him. So I think that he understands that if we do not right the ship, if you will, on election fairness and election security, that this nation is doomed. That sounds counterintuitive to what I just said, that I have hope. It's all predicated on making sure that we have the U.S. attorneys in place and he is able to prosecute those people that have done evil against the American people. Because every time an illegitimate vote is counted, somebody else's legitimate vote is negated.
Right. Let's switch gears real quick. You guys are a border state. We're a border state here in Texas. Let's talk about that real quick. So ICE has detention detainers on a lot of people, violent criminals, DWIs, rapists, murderers.
Right.
So ICE is going after the real bad guys first. So here in locally, we have a precinct constable that pulled over an illegal alien. Did not show his ID, resisted arrest. They called in backup, and quite a few patrolmen and deputies showed up to help assist the arrest. They get him cuffed and stuffed, and literally minutes later, a county commissioner's wife shows up on scene and commences to say on body camera footage in front of all these officers that I've called the sheriff. He's like family to us. The sheriff gets involved, springs this guy out of jail, even though there's an ICE detainer on him for deportation, springs this Guatemalan out of his jail and has a judge magistrate him on a PR bond, a $500 PR bond. This is a Republican sheriff and a Republican county commissioner. And again, this is
the wife of a county commissioner.
The wife. The wife, exactly, the wife of the county commissioner.
So here's the teachable moment here. Apparently they missed the judge in Wisconsin who's going to do prison time for interfering with ICE. I don't give a bloody damn who you are. If there's an ICE detainer on a criminal, sheriff, wife of the county commissioner, if you interfere, you deserve to go to prison.
So
for the same reasons that the judge in Wisconsin interfered with the Department of Homeland Security, with ICE, with prosecuting their duty. So I hope that story makes its way to DHS, to the Texas U.S. Attorney, and that they come down hard on the sheriff and that commissioner. That kind of crap is what got us where we're at now.
It's sad to see that. I mean, like I said, this is another reason why it's hard for me to back either one of the major parties, and I consider myself an independent because of this nonsense that goes on in both parties. And I'm not going to say it doesn't happen with independent type candidates either, but it seems like it's getting more and more prevalent in the Republican Party than it ever used to be.
Well, we've got fractured. That's for sure.
What's that?
We've got a fractured party. That's for sure. And I think that you should probably give up the sheriff's name and the name of the county commissioner's wife, just so that it's memorialized in this broadcast, so that when the U.S. attorney wants to go investigate that, they can.
So it was Brazoria County Sheriff Bo Stallman, Leonard Bo Stallman, and it was Commissioner Ryan Cade's wife, Kelly Cade.
There you go.
The magistrate, the JP that got him out on that PR bond, even though there was an ICE detainer, was Judge Davis.
My recommendation to you is to file a report with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Texas, because I'm pretty sure that President Trump, as outraged as he was by the behavior of the judge up in Wisconsin, like I say, she's going to be doing prison time.
Yeah.
Never to be on the bench again. This sheriff should be removed from office for not enforcing the law. Period.
I agree. I mean, not just because I ran against the guy and I truly know that I would have done a better job, but if you break the law, it doesn't matter what law it is. I feel like every law should be upheld. If you don't like the law, then have the law changed in your legislators.
Well, here's an example of what we were talking about earlier. Think about this for a second. The wife of a county commissioner says, I know the sheriff, we're friends. You need to let this guy go because the sheriff's going to let him go. Where's the accountability there?
There is no accountability.
That means that the sheriff now is compromised. That means the sheriff now can't do his duty because he's beholden to a county commissioner. That is what got America in the peril that we are in today.
So we were able to get our hands on the police report, the original police report, heavily redacted, mind you. But on that police report, it was confirmed that this Guatemalan guy, Edgar, worked on Commissioner Cade's cattle ranch. It does say that.
Oh, there you go. I was waiting for you to drop the financial interest that's involved.
Yep, he works on the cattle ranch of Commissioner Cade and has been. So this is what I've been told. So don't hold me to this, but I've been told that there's been an ICE detainer on this guy since the Obama days in like the 2012, 2011 range. And this guy's been working for Cade for over a decade.
All right, so that needs to go to the U.S. attorney. They need to make a poster child out of this guy.
Yeah. But, I mean, how do you go out there and try to uphold the law when you're doing this behind the scenes?
It's virtually impossible.
Right.
But see, that's why the system's got to change. That's why you need to make a report to the U.S. attorney for whatever district of Texas it is and say, hey, this is no different than the judge in Wisconsin.
I'm fairly certain the Texas Rangers have already investigated this.
Well, if they're not going to do anything, then you go up the ladder.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, this will be the first public announcement of any of this since it's happened, and it happened at the beginning of May.
Well, you might want to start taking a bike to work now.
Taking a bike to work.
Hard to hide a bomb on a bicycle.
Right.
Yeah.
Senator, can you give us any pitfalls that you see coming up with the 2026 elections?
I would encourage President Trump to issue an executive order that requires hand counting of paper ballots at the precinct level for federal offices. He doesn't have any authority over county and state offices, but he sure as hell does over the federal offices. That's Congress. If there's any Senate races, those are really the only seats. Because here's what the game plan is for the radical Marxist left. They want to try and impeach that man again. And when we have Republicans who will not support 70% of the American people, that's a pitfall.
Do you think they're compromised financially or morally or some Epstein, Diddy type stuff? Why do you think these Republicans, these rhinos, are so dead set against President Trump and national security?
Brother, they're compromised in one way or another. Let me count the ways. There's so many different ways they can be compromised. But here's the job of the people. Be diligent about questioning your representative. And if he ain't doing his job in the primary, replace him. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, but I love my congressman. It's the other guy that's the problem. Well, look at their voting record. Look at what they say. Look at how they behave. Are they approachable? Are they available to you to ask questions? Do they blow you off or do they do your work? Because at the end of the day, and I tell this to my constituents, I work for you. I am under your employ. You are my principal and I am your agent. And it damn well ought to be that way in Congress, but it's not. The EO that needs to come from the president, I hope that he catches this. I mean, we're already actively advocating for that. One of our people has advised the Oval Office a couple of times now, from what I understand, on voter registration stuff. You know, how do we get away from the voter registration architecture that we've got? And because the voter rolls across the United States are incredibly polluted. All right, so how do you fix that? We've got a plan that we've expressed to the president's team. We've also got evidence that if you just go to paper ballots with photo ID and you count them by hand, you're going to blow up a large part of the big cheat.
Right.
So people just need to be on their toes. We compare the 2022 election in Arizona and Maricopa County with the 2024 election. The machines didn't fail. Yeah. 60-some% of machines failed in Republican districts.
Right.
And
that's pretty cool.
Every one of those voters is a Republican. Yeah. So we do have some, like I said, whistleblowers. And by the way, I would say to anybody who's aware of election fraud by your employer, or election tampering, it doesn't even have to be fraud, election tampering. My message to you is this: it's better to be a witness than a suspect.
I feel like there's going to be some big revelations coming soon, and the whole ship's going to sink. Everybody that was involved in every bit of the tampering, from the lower level guys all the way up to the people that were orchestrating funding it. Yeah. I have a feeling the whole trap's going to be sprung soon, and they're all going to get caught. Now's the time to get out of it.
Right. So, and you're talking about the prisoner's dilemma in game theory. Maybe this is a good jumping off place for me. You've got all these folks now that are waiting for the other shoe to drop. The first shoe was President Trump got elected. Oh, no, what's coming? Well, they don't know what's coming. President Trump is a master at timing. There's a reason that he hasn't taken action up to this point. And I'm willing to give the man some deference. I'm willing to trust him because he's been right so many times in the past. He's the one who's controlling the chess match. Make no mistake about it. When it's time to pull the trigger on this and begin rolling up people for election crimes, you'll know it, man.
Yeah.
You'll know it. So that's why I say if you are an employee of a company that prints ballots, a trucking company that ships ballots, an elections office that you know is corrupt, you might want to think about being a whistleblower, because it is always better to be a witness than a suspect. So if you know something, say something.
Absolutely.
Now's your opportunity to come in out of the cold and to out those people who are basically stealing your republic under the guise of, it's okay, it's not going to matter, just go along to get along. That's unacceptable.
It's happening everywhere. It's not just in national presidential elections.
Yeah.
It's happened all the way down to the precinct level, the small elections.
Well, I think the American people have woken up, though. I mean, with the populist movement, that's what's got the radical left terrified. The populist movement, and thanks to folks like Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, Gateway Pundit, Joe and Jim Hoft, the American population, the populace, is now engaged in a populist revolt. It's slow motion, but they're in revolt.
Right.
And that's why you see so many congressmen either resigning or just saying, I'm not going to run again. I'm done. Before
we let you run, Mark, I know you're time sensitive. So what's next for you? Secretary of State again or governor?
No. I'm in a good place right now as a senator. I've got a couple of projects that have got a fairly long runway that are going to be substantive changes in law and practice in Arizona. We've got a great governor candidate, Andy Biggs, who is Congressman Andy Biggs. Mm-hmm. Andy was chairman of the Freedom Caucus, so he's going to bring that to Arizona. We've got I think a fairly decent Secretary of State candidate, and we've got a really good Attorney General candidate, the current President of the Senate, Warren Peterson. So that sets up, I think, an opportunity for us to have a strong Senate, a strong House of Representatives. If we are able to recapture the governor's mansion, we will get across the finish line game-changing authority and law that hold people accountable that we have not been able to get into law for the last 20 years. We'll have the right people in place.
That would be fantastic. And then with Arizona being in such a big spotlight for so many years, watching everything unfold, it'll be victorious for the nation to watch Arizona come out of it. And you guys being pretty much self-funded and you guys doing it from the grassroots level is very admirable.
Well, and with the election
$20 donation at a time.
Yeah, with the Election Fairness Institute, and I can't emphasize that enough. We operate on donations that are anywhere from $20 to $200. We're one of the few organizations that has been able to feed meaningful, actionable information to law enforcement so they can actually do something about it.
That's awesome. And we'll put that up on the screen for people to follow.
We appreciate it.
Absolutely. What's your X handle?
Real Mark Finchem.
Senator Finchum, thank you so much for being on with us, and keep fighting a good fight.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Take care.